Hello chess friends and welcome to your out of chess channel and welcome back to the US Chess Championship in 2022. So we're now already in the round 12 of this beautiful chess event and we're following now an epic game between Sevian and Moke and Niemann. Usually this game wouldn't be so important because both of them cannot compete anymore for the first place, and usually this game would be also special because we'll not see here some great theoretical novelties or something, but this game I think will be written in chess history books because really wild things happened and some things that I think I've never seen in my life. Be prepared, this will be really crazy thing will happen. But first we'll start to analyze the game, and then when that moment happens I wanted to show you really weird things because again Niemann is part of the chance controversy a little bit, but it's not his fault today because Samuel 7 pulled off really wild things. So let's see now first the game, and then we'll see this controversial moment of this beautiful chess game. So here Samuel 7 opened with the move d4. Hans response was knight to f6, c4, e6. We have knight to f3, the anti-Nimzo or counter Nimzo Indian setup. d5, the game transposes into the queen's gambit decline. Knight to c3, 3 knights variation. After move c5, we have now the so-called Semi-Tarrasch defense. And most of the time, when you have this dynamics in the center of the board, you basically evaluate the position, what kind of an outcome we can have when we have this collision of pawns in the center of the board. Then of course you want not to risk an isolated pawn, so that's why many times white continues with this plan, c takes d5, and now after move e takes d5 in the near future we can of course from white's perspective play d takes c5, and then black is many times left with an isolated pawn. So now the most modern way is this way that Niemann pulled off here. He took also in the center of the board, he battles now also for the center in a beautiful sharp tactical way. We have now queen takes d4, and now okay, after e takes d5 that Moke and Niemann played here, of course in the near future we can expect the move knight to c6, and then the queen is kicked away. So now comes really the main theory of this line of the Semi-Tarrasch defense, e4. It is a sharp line, but in my opinion it's one of the best lines here for white. White should really play the game like this, because if now knight to c6 happens too early, then still have opportunities to play bishop to b5 to keep the queen a little bit longer in the center of the board. And now you just castle play rook to e1, maybe include the bishop into the game. You also include this other rook into the game, so the time that you get I think is really great. So in at least for a while you can stay, as I said, with your queen in the center of the board. But now after move e4 that Samuel 7 pulled off here, Moke and Niemann took, we have d takes e4, and you see now the idea about this line is to trade off the queens, decoy the king of course towards the center of the board. Now the king has lost the privilege of castling. Of course with ideas of knight to g5 you can actually get your pawn back. So it's a line that's often played now, especially I think when you want to get maybe a draw. If you want to go into a drawish line, this is also a good line for black. Black can play many times this line in order to gain equality in an early stage of the game. So here comes bishop to e6. So Moke and Niemann protects now the pawn on f7, which is critical. Of course if you allow that, then you could get the fork against the king and the rook. So now a3. This move is a prophylactic move by Samuel 7, because many times what black is hoping to do is get this bishop to b4, and okay, you have maybe some time in the near future to take out the pawn on e4, but actually with bishop to b4, even if you somehow recapture the pawn on e4, there could be this idea bishop takes c3, b takes c3, and then you're left with a structural weakness. Then you're left with maybe an isolated pawn on the c file. So basically now in the game everything counts here. What you're not trying to get is, as I said, maybe a position where you have a weak pawn, an isolated pawn, maybe a weak square, maybe the undeveloped piece. So these are the weaknesses that you don't want to get. So that's why Samuel plays now a normal move, a prophylactic move, a3. What you could do is of course also to take out here the pawn immediately, but this could be risky. After knight takes e4, knight takes e4, bishop to b4, now you have to cover, and now look at this, black is developing here in a fast way. Now even if you take, knight to b4 happens, and now there are also some risks of here knight to c2. If rook to d1 happens, okay, we just step back, and now in the near future this could be weak. Also we can deliver a check, the rooks will be included into the game, so black should be even much faster when it comes to development here. So we should not forget about this. This is not the way I think that white wants to play the game. So instead of this a3 move, what you could also do is to play maybe knight takes e6 immediately to take out the bishop, doubling up the pawn structure. And now you can play maybe something like bishop to g5, king to e8, getting out of this mess. And now after queenside castling, knight to c6, bishop to b5, rook to c8 would be also an interesting line, but still also in the near future we can expect, I think, also bishop to b4, bishop takes c3, again messing up a little bit here the pawn structure. So that's why a3. So many opportunities, you can be the judge of this position, but a3 in my opinion really also here the best way for white. So here knight to d7 was played by Hans Niemann. We have bishop to f4, rook to c8, simply normal development. We have now g3, fixing now the bishop and also trying to develop the light bishop, and finally really get the pawn back, recapture the pawn on e4. So again, if you try knight to e4 too early now, this could be again a problem, because look at this, knight to e4, knight takes e4, and now with h6 we are threatening actually here this move g5, and if you prevent maybe this move with the move h4, then you could get here f5, you have to step back here, knight to c3, and now with bishop to e7, bishop to e2, again black has, I think, time to develop the pieces in a proper way. Now king to e7 will happen, maybe king to f7, but again we're targeting here. I think we can play bishop to c3, rook takes c3. This is not a good position maybe here for white anymore. So that's why after move rook to c8, as we said, g3 was played. Still Samuel 7 is not taking here the pawn on e4. So here we have bishop to b3, bishop to g2, and now knight to h5. Okay, here Hans is saying, okay, you can take out the pawn, but at least I'll grab your bishop. At least I have then the bishop pair in the game, and you have a structural weakness again. Again, we have this double pawn. So that's why bishop to e3. We have now f5. Here Hans is staying now finally with his pawn on the board, but now after move g4 that was played by Samuel 7, here f4, also a counter attack by Hans Moke Niemann. Maybe you could do this one instead of this move g4, you could try bishop to a7, but actually this would be a dirty trap, because now with b6, look at this, the bishop is paralyzed here, the bishop cannot escape anymore, and in the near future it will be probably taken, or at least you have to sacrifice the bishop for pawn on b6, and then black is continuing, of course, the game with an extra piece. So here in the continuation after move g4, as I said, we have f4, we have bishop to d4. Maybe it was time now to take, maybe this was now the first inaccuracy by Sevian. He should have maybe finally taking the pawn. At least you're doing something. b6 is not, of course, not an opportunity because the knight is hanging. Maybe this was simply the time, but he continued here with active play, bishop to d4, also not allowing maybe this bishop to get developed on this diagonal, because of course the rook is hanging on h6. So here in the continuation we have f3 by Hans Moke Niemann. He's continuing with this counter attack on the king side. We have g takes h5, f takes g2, attacking the rook, rook to g1, and now finally knight to f6 here by Hans Niemann. He's again protecting the pawn on e4. So now rook takes g2. Again, if you try here bishop to a7 instead of this rook takes g2, then bishop to c5 could happen. You have to trade off the bishops now. The knight is hanging now. You can maybe take it out. Knight to e4, knight to e4, knight to e4. But now with rook to e5, the game is quite unpleasant again for white here. You have to play a weird move f3, but now this other rook is coming into the game. Now after rook takes g2, you have to now even protect your knight here on the e file. But now, of course, black has again some time. Black can regroup. At least we can also take out this pawn. It's weak, so many structural weaknesses. Again, many weaknesses in the position. The bishop is very active here, so in my opinion, this should be a better game for black. So that's why after move knight to f6, we have here rook takes g2. So again, Sevian didn't take out the pawn on e4. We have bishop to c5, and now comes the first, in my opinion, critical moment of the game. So bishop to c5 is perfectly fine. What here Sevian should have done is simple idea here, as we said, bishop to f6, g takes f6. Now you just grab the pawn here. Maybe after bishop to b6 we can take out also this one. Okay, you're a little bit vulnerable here. You king is kind of stuck in the center, but actually you can escape, and here with the move f3 you can even make your position more solid in the center, supporting your knight on e4, supporting also the knight on c3, include maybe both of the rooks into the game, maybe even trade off at least one of the rooks. Then when one of the rooks is off the board, then the game is probably not so complicated anymore. But as I said, bishop to f6 was maybe here the way to go for Sevian. But unfortunately he tried rook to d1, and rook to d1 d1 is a spectacular idea. He played here really wild, brilliant tactical move. What he saw was really amazing. How long he calculated this tactical sequence that he calculated was really brilliant, but the outcome still is not so clear, because after rook to d1, what Sem7 noticed, okay, that when you take out the rook, that actually the bishop is not covering anymore the e6 square. That was now the main issue of black. So look at this now, what happened. This is now pretty much forced tactical sequence that happened because of the move rook to d1. So now here Hans Niemann accepts the challenge, plays now bishop to d1. We have knight to e6, playing the fork. You have to step back with the king. Knight to c5. Again, your bishop is hanging, and the problem is now there is not a good square for the bishop. You cannot use this square, you cannot use this square. If you play, of course, bishop to c2, then we take out the pawn on g7, and the rook comes very active into the game. So here, if you try something like king to d6, then you get knight to b5. You have to play something like king to c6, and now for instance, after move knight to a7, sorry, my just screen moved. Now for knight to a7, you lose also the rook, so this is devastating here for black. So that's why instead of this move knight to c5, there are no good squares anymore left, so you have to play now bishop to g4. But notice now the bishop to g4 is kind of overloaded here. At least the knight is overloaded to the defense of the bishop. Now Sem7 plays a brilliant move, knight takes e4. We have knight takes e4, we have rook to g4, knight takes c3. Everything is pretty much forced. As we said, rook to g7 comes with check, and here after move king to d6, maybe a new critical moment here of the game, because Sem7 actually took with the pawn, and in many occasions this would be okay because you're not weakening your pawn structure, but actually b takes c3 is a little bit better because you're staying active. You're staying active with your bishop, and the bishop is centralized now. At least you're attacking the pawn on a7. This game would be very interesting if Sem7 would have played this sequence like this. Look at this. He has still here a sort of a 3 versus 1 situation against black here on the king side. If he grabs one of these pawns, then he could have here a 2 versus 1 situation. So then okay, there are also some threats maybe to play rook to b7, and then also taking out the rook. Okay, now probably black could continue with rook to e8, getting at least out of the range of the bishop. Now we play something like king to f1, securing the king, and now maybe, just maybe here, black can compete on the 7th rank and hope for the best. But as I said, this was the way to go. Here, Sem7 took with the bishop. Bishop takes c3. We have rook to e1, rook to e8, king to f1, rook to c7. Again, here Hans Niemann is trying to simplify the game. We have here rook to g4, rook to f7, targeting now the weak f2 pawn. We have now a4 and now b6 here. Hans Niemann is stopping the progress of white's pawns here on the queen side. So we have now h6, and you see here still Sem7 has some opportunities because he could get his rook on the 7th rank. Maybe he can get the passer here on the g file, and then of course also play slowly f4, f5, f6. If he connects somehow this h pawn maybe to the g file, and then with the f pawn, if he creates maybe 2 passers, 2 connected passers, then this could be a much better position for white. So really black also needs to be careful. So after move h6, we have rook to e3. Great move by Hans Niemann in order to include the rook into the game. This was really necessary. We have rook to d4, king to e6. We have a5, continuing the pressure on the queen side. We have now a rook to f3, targeting the weak f2 pawn. Rook to d2, very important move, defensive move. And you see how Hans Niemann with this kind of simple threats forced Sem7 to play passively with the rook. Now the rook is okay, it's defending, but at least it's not attacking, for instance here, the pawn on h7. So in the continuation, we have b5, we have bishop to d4, rook to d7, not allowing of course to take out the pawn because the rook is hanging on d2, king to g2, rook to f5. We have a check, and now after king to d5, bishop to g7, Hans Moke Niemann is slowly but surely also including the king into the game, and now he's targeting of course the weak b2 pawn. If that happens, then of course this could be a passer on the b file, and this could be then a completely winning endgame here for black. So something went wrong. That's the point. I think something went wrong in Sem7's tactical sequence. This wasn't good how he played the game. This was really not necessary that he went into this wild tactical line. From that point on, basically the game is a one-way ticket. So rook to e4, we have king to b3, rook to e8. Here Sem7 is trying now to grab this pawn and maybe create a passer at least on the h file. We have rook to f7, rook to h8, and here after rook to g5 that Hans Niemann played, we have here king to h3. b4 was played by Hans Moke Niemann, and here from move king to h4. Now actually Hans plays maybe even his first mistake in the game. He plays now the move rook to g6, and pardon me, this was really unnecessary. What he should have played, simply just grab this pawn, just grab this pawn on the a file, and in the near future we can also maybe even sacrifice the rook for the bishop, take out this pawn. This rook will always compete, I think, with a potential passer on the h file of white. In the meanwhile, of course, you are creating two passers, then two connected pass pawns, and this should be again much better. You can maybe, let's see, we'll try this one, rook to h7. You're continuing with this plan, but now we take out also this one. Maybe you're trying to attack the rook on with the move king to g3, but now again we just play active with the rook. You play something like king to rook to h8, and now rook to g5. You can even, I think, sacrifice now, as I said, the rook for the exchange, and now at least you grab the pawn. This pawn is lost, and then we have created, as we said, two passers, and this is completely winning for black. But unfortunately for Hans Niemann, he didn't play rook to a5. He played now a brutal mistake. He played rook to g6, and this is now pretty equalish now, because look at this, after rook to h7 that Sem7 played here. Again, a new wild move by Hans Moke Niemann. He played now a very dubious rook to h6, and this is not good. He should have at least proceeded with rook to f2, maybe again with the same plan, trying to somehow grab the bishop, take out this pawn, maybe also this pawn, and then connect somehow these two passers and maybe go into favorable endgame. But this, what Hans Niemann did here, he played now rook takes h6, and now after rook takes h6, rook to g7 and f4. Now really wild things happen. So here after move king to b2, what Sem7 did, he actually took in one particular moment, this is really wild, this never happened in chess history. Sem7 took, actually, I'm not sure if it's in this position or maybe in a couple of moves before, but actually what he did, he took Hans Niemann's king and he pulled off this cross that's on the king, and then he started to put the king somewhere else on the board, and Hans Niemann was like, what are you doing? It's almost like he said, what you're doing, what's the problem by touching my king? What's your problem? Why do you touch my pieces? Why do you destroy my pieces? Because actually it seemed to me in the beginning that the king was broken. It's almost like Sem7 broke the whole king. Really incredible things happened. I'm not sure if that's somewhere described in some chess rules, what happens if your opponent breaks your piece or something. But actually then they regrouped. Hans Niemann stopped the clock in one particular moment, then they start to discuss this a little bit, and actually they continued to play. Sem7 put back the cross on the king, and then they continued. So it was really amazing. As I said, I've never seen a thing like this before in chess history. But the fun part is that every time when we have chess controversy, now Hans Niemann is somehow included, although probably this is not his fault today, because what Sem7 pulled off here is really incredible. But we should not be also critical. I think what Sem7 tried to do here is actually that he tried to get somehow one piece. He didn't probably notice that he took the king, and he probably want to spin it through his finger. So many times you see chess players just let maybe a pawn or a rook roll through his fingers, because maybe they're releasing some pressure somehow by doing this. I'm not sure what happened, but as I said, it was really fun to see, and I watched the live stream, and Yasser Servan was laughing really in a beautiful way. It was really fun thing to watch. As I said, never seen in chess history. So let's now see what happened after move king to b2. So Hans Niemann basically messed up the whole endgame, and what bothers me in Hans Niemann's play is actually his endgames. He's having, I think, great openings. He's getting out of openings really in a beautiful way. I think he spends most of the time in studies opening theory. He has also cool ideas in the middle game stage. He has the wild ideas, we have to say. Maybe these ideas sometimes are incorrect, but at least he's producing ideas, and producing ideas is really the hardest thing, I think, in chess. But his endgames are not so good. He messed up too many times now. A winning endgame, he messed up too many times. A drawish endgame where he lost the game. So this is the thing that he needs to improve. If he improves his endgames, he could be really a monster in chess. He could be really a brutal chess player, because, as I said, because of his producing ideas skills, I think he's a phenomenal player. But here he again messed up a potential endgame that he should have won. Here Sem7 sensed also now some blood, and he is realizing now I should just push the pawn. We have here f5, we have now b3, f6, and after rook to g2 now comes a new critical moment. Here Sem7 played a wild move h3, and this was really unnecessary. You don't push this pawn, you don't play any moves with this pawn. What you're trying to do, you're pushing either this pawn, or you at least improve the rook's activity. That's, I think, that you should do in this endgame. Only these two moves are working for you, or at least you're maybe trying to improve the king's position somehow. But actually, whatever you do, look at this. The good move is like actually rook to h5, and probably here he was scared about this sequence: rook to h2, then you play something like king to g5, rook to f2. But now with rook to h7, we can actually take out this pawn, and then we can also compete. Notice that also white can create here a passer on the a file. Again, this should be an equal endgame. But after move h3 that Sem7 played, now Hans Niemann is saying, okay, you lost the tempo, and losing a tempo in such a rook and pawn endgame is crucial here. It's devastating for white. Now Hans Niemann is saying, you cannot stop anymore my pawn. Now the rook cannot even get behind because the pawn is standing in the way, so you lose another tempo. So this is now simply winning endgame here for Hans. Rook to h7, now he simply pushed the pawn. We have here now we have here rook to b7, and now Hans plays the correct move. Plays first, attacks this pawn. He's not allowing here Sem7 to push the pawn further. Okay, he played f7, but now the rook is getting behind. The king gets closer to the rook, but now comes, of course, this common deflection idea, deflecting the rook from the b file. And now here Hans promoted to a new queen, and here, of course, Sem7 played now the move h4 and hope for the best, maybe to get some kind of a drawish position. So after h4, let's see now how can you win this endgame, because many of us would still struggle, of course, with this endgame. The idea is clear. What we're trying to do is grab this pawn and then create ourselves a passer, because white is always vulnerable to the checks by black's queen. So of course white's king is more endangered, so that's why black can always deliver check and improve a little bit the position of the king, play towards the center with the king. So the activity that you can also get now with your king is crucial here. If black manages now to grab the pawn and creates himself a passer here on the a file, then of course this should be winning. So that's now Hans Niemann's play. He is now playing queen to g1, protects also here the pawn on a7. Now after a couple of checks, we have here king to c4, we have rook to g7. A beautiful idea here by Sem7 to really force a stalemate here, but of course Hans Niemann didn't fall for this. He played a check. We have rook to g5, queen to e7, and now of course moving the king a little bit closer here to the action. So we have now king to e4. Okay, you have your fun, you have one check, but now again the king gets closer and closer. So here in the continuation, we have now rook to f5, king to e6. Now no checks are possible by the rook. Now we have queen to e8, because the threat was of course rook to e4. Now after the check, again Hans Niemann delivers a new check, king to h5, and now after king to e5, the rook is hanging. But now again a beautiful move. What Hans Niemann is also trying to get maybe some kind of a check, and also to double attack also the rook, and then to capture the piece. So white needs to be careful also about this idea. So rook to f8, we have queen to d1, king to g5, queen to d2, king to h5, queen to d7, and now after rook to f1, queen to b5. Now the rook is hanging, and also the pawn is hanging. We have here rook to f8, and now after queen to a6, mission accomplished. This is the position that we wanted to get. Now black as a passer, and this is now completely winning. So we have king to g5, queen to e6, we have king to rook to f1, trying again a new check here on the e file. This is not possible. We have queen to g8, we have king to h6, a couple of checks, queen to d8, king to h5, and here after move a5 in this position Sevian resigned. There's nothing that can be done. This pawn is unstoppable, and of course, as we said, even if you try to play something like king to h6 and push the pawn further, you're always vulnerable to these checks by the queen. The queen is of course much more flexible piece than the rook, and this is completely winning. So as I said, in this position Sevian resigned. So really wild things happened. Sam broke Hans Niemann's king, but actually then afterwards Hans Niemann broke eventually White's king here. Sevian's king deserved win, I think. Hans Niemann played here really aggressively in the opening. Then Sevian played this tactical line, really wild tactical sequence. The game could have gone also in a different direction, but beautiful study, I think, also in the Semi-Tarrasch defense. Really cool ideas we have seen by both sides. So incredible game. This is top grandmaster chess, really incredible chess. Eventually also we have seen a couple of blunders, which is also many times happening even in top grandmaster level. So this is really incredible. So now with this win, Hans Niemann has now 3 consecutive wins, which is really wild. He can get maybe into the top 5, top 6 of this chess event tomorrow when he wins maybe a new game. We'll see what will happen, but so far he got also his rating back. Maybe if he wins tomorrow, then he can be again the part of the 2700 rating club. We'll see what will happen, but Hans Niemann played here so far a good game. So okay, incredible game. If you want to see more of this beautiful chess event, check out our coverage of the US Chess Championship so far. Here's the link of some games that we have seen before, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what you say, chess is the best, of course.